Okay, well, welcome to our study. We're in the book of John. We're going to be in chapter 7? 6? 7? 67? 666. 666. Come on. 16?
No. Jesus walking on water.
It's in John?
Yeah.
I think it's in 6.
It's in 6, not 16.
6.
6.
We did 6.
We did
No.
6. We started in 6.
We started.
Okay, he's right. We started in 6, but we did that last week, and that's when Jesus fed the 5,000.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
Walking on water this week.
All right, so now you're getting ahead of me, Mike, because I want to use those terms. When I say biblically literate, when I say somebody is biblically literate, what do I mean?
How to read, right?
There you go.
Oh, that's literate. They know how to
No,
read.
they know the Bible.
They know the Bible. They're
Yeah.
biblically literate. All right. So that's a context. So if I want to use a phrase, unless you understand the context of it, okay, it won't mean anything to you. I can do. Well, there's a thing called Christianese. We can talk in Christian terms. Most non-Christians won't understand what we're talking about. I can talk military terms. All right. I'm going to do that for you right now. And it's going to sound like I'm talking about a foreign language. All right? We were launching, all right, the last shot for the last cycle. We were in a blue water op in the IO. All right? When the first recovery came in, now the F-14 was, way too low, so the LSO called for MP. But wasn't enough. And as a result, the F-14, boom, caught the tail, spun, sheared off all of its landing gear, turned counterclockwise and then spun counterclockwise and went tail end off the angle. All right? Now, the problem was, it was the first recovery of the last cycle. So we had all the other birds still in the air. All right? Now, because we were in the IO, the F-14 was totally loaded. All right? Phoenix, Sidewinders, you name it. Plus just the JP-5 that was on the flight deck. All right? So we had to respond to that. Okay, what did I just say?
There were firearms.
It sounded like my son when he talks military.
There you go. It's right. It's an entire, and you don't have the context. I don't blame you. You have no idea what I'm talking about.
Sideline
military police.
Yeah. And also, the terms I use could be, Sidewinders actually a rattlesnake. All right? The way they move
I've
sideways.
seen them, yeah.
Yeah. So just using those terms, you get kind of confused. Now, I think one term you will know. All right? You probably know what an F-14 is. Or actually what an F-14 was. Right. We don't use F-14s anymore. All right. What's an F-14?
It's a fighting plane.
Fighter pilot. It's fighter plane.
pilot,
Right.
yeah.
It's the F-14 Tomcat. And if you ever saw the movie Top Gun, that's what they're flying in it. They're flying the Tomcat. All right. Oh, a wonderful movie. Yeah. All right. So what was I talking about? What I was talking about, I said that we were in a blue water op. All right. And that's Navy terms for that there's no place for the aircraft on an aircraft carrier to land except on the aircraft carrier. We're too far out in the ocean. We were in the IO, the Indian Ocean, on board my aircraft carrier, the Abraham Lincoln. We were launching, we had already launched our last aircraft for the last cycle. So what we do is all day long, we're constantly launching and recovering aircraft so the pilots can keep practicing. Even as we get closer and closer to the Persian Gulf, where we're going to go in there and shoot the Iraqi Air Force down, or at least keep it on the ground where it belongs. So we're crossing the Indian Ocean, and sure enough, our first recovery of the last cycle, so we have 18 aircraft still in the air, was an F-14 that came in too low. What happens is it's natural for the pilots to spot the deck. When they're looking at the deck, instead of looking at the meat ball, call the ball, you'll hear it in Top Gun, Roger ball, all right? They don't look at that, they look at the deck, they think they're too high, and so they bleed off their power, and so they drop. Problem is, all right, they're too low. The landing signal officer, the LSO, is calling for MP, more power, but it's too late. The F-14 is too low. When it came in, all this landing gear, right, the wheels, sheared off, and it smacked the nose of the aircraft down. It turned this way and then spun the other way and went tail end, the end of the aircraft first, off the angle deck of the aircraft carrier and into the ocean. They had Phoenix missiles, Sidewinder missiles, all on board. They were rolling around the flight deck, and the flight deck was on fire. And we still had 18 birds in the air, no place to land but that burning flight deck. General quarters, fire, 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 fire on the flight deck. It was 11 o'clock at night. We were up, I was in a class at 11 o'clock at night. Life at sea, sailors don't go to bed, you don't quit work at 5 o'clock. You work 16, 18-hour days. There's nothing else to do, just work, all right? So I was in a class at that time when we had the fire on the flight deck, and we had to respond, all right? And we had casualties. First of all, we had the 2 pilots in the water, all right? Then we have a plane guard, the guy guarding the fantail. All that shrapnel came down on top of him. Guys got broken clavicles and all kinds of just diving out of the way. These kind of things happen a lot, by the way. You just don't hear about them because they're not news. And so we had to respond to all that. And so, but that was a totally different language, all right? So the Bible can be the same way. Mike stole some of my thunder. Said, all right, if I say something, it's a military term, by the way, all right? Hey, you know something? He's a water walker. Have you ever heard that? Or he walks on water? We know what that means, right? But if you've never read this story that we're reading tonight, you won't know what that means. You won't know what it means to be a water walker or to walk on water. There's a lot of those kind of things. Even when we talk about feeding the 5,000, unless you're a student of the Bible. By the way, you can be a Christian and still not know, all right? If you don't know the context, you won't gain it. All right, so that's the first thing we want to talk about tonight when we get into John. The second thing is, we're reading, remember the Bible's divided into 2 big sections. What are those sections? Right. And then within those, there are sections, okay? In the Old Testament, they'll talk about the Torah, the first 5 books of Moses, or the Pentateuch in Greek, all right? And then you can go into the history books. There's the Psalms, right, the poetry books. Then there's the major prophets, there's the minor prophets. And then the New Testament, it's also set up in different sections. The first 4 books are called what?
Gospel.
The Gospels. These are the stories specifically about Jesus. Then you get the book of Acts. And then you have the Pauline epistles, the letters written by Paul. And then you have the ones that are written by John, you have ones written by Peter, and then, of course, John wrote the book of Revelation. So those are the sections. So we're in the Gospels. We're reading the book of John. Now, when we started the book of John a long time ago, I said even the Gospels are divided. There are 3 Gospels that are alike, and then ones that's different. Do you know which one was different? John. The other 3 are called the Synoptic Gospels. They're very much alike. They're same stories all through them. You can read Matthew, and you pretty much picked up on everything that's written in Mark and Luke, although Mark was written first. John starts very differently and doesn't, and it gives us a different perspective on Jesus. Not tonight, though. Tonight, the walking on water is in all the Gospels, but the best rendition of it is in the book of Matthew. Okay? So we're going to read John 6 tonight. We're going to read that portion of John, and then we're going to go to Matthew 14, and then we're going to read the more expanded one, which is my favorite one. Now get this, especially as a sailor.
That was my dad, too.
All right? And you'll see why, because that story doesn't work in being a sailor. It really doesn't apply much in the book of John. But when we get to the book of Matthew, you'll see what I mean. Why it's much more interesting as a sailor. Because I'm going to tell you, Peter's going to do 3 things that we tell sailors never to do in a small boat. Bless you. Is everybody ready? Mm-hmm. All right. So this is John chapter 6. We're going to begin in verse 16. Oh, we didn't do our review, but it was I don't want to get too much into that, but the review was he fed the 5,000, and he was really using it as a test of the disciples to make sure they knew that they could trust him, that he was who he said he was, and that he could do miracles, and specifically the idea of running bread. It's okay, dear. I'm going to read it all out for you. So let's go ahead. John 6:16. Here we go. When evening came, his disciples went down to the lake, where they got into a boat and set across the lake for Capernaum. By now it was dark, and Jesus had not yet joined them. A strong wind was blowing, and the waters grew rough. When they had rowed 3 or 3.5 miles, they saw Jesus approaching the boat, walking on the water. And they were terrified. But he said to them, what's the most common phrase in the Bible?
His eye.
Do not be afraid.
Well, no. don't be afraid. And then I know it's the next thing, Sharon, it does say that, it is I, but the most common phrase in the Bible, 365 times, either fear not or do not be afraid. All right? I mean, they were terrified. It is I, don't be afraid. Verse 21. Then they were willing to take him into the boat, and immediately the boat reached the shore where they were heading. The next day, the crowd that had stayed on the opposite shore of the lake realized that only one boat had been there, and that Jesus had not entered into it with his disciples, but they had gone away alone. Then some boats from Tiberias landed near the place where the people had eaten the bread that the Lord had given thanks. Once the crowd realized that neither Jesus nor his disciples were there, they got into the boats and went to Capernaum in search of Jesus. All right, very short, all right, very specific. And you hear the story. This is pretty much the way it's said in Mark and Luke as well. Straight to the point. Watch what happens in the book of Matthew. Okay, we get more detail. So now we're going to go to the book of Matthew, and we're going to be in chapter 14. 14.
Ooh, I got right to it.
So you should have bet the lottery today. We're going to be in verse 22 when you get there. So we're in chapter 14, and we'll be in verse 22. Matthew 14, 22.
22, too.
Well, I don't know, Naomi. Got my glasses on. Well, well,
Always a good idea.
I'll blur. Although they claim I have 20/20 vision.
With the glasses, right?
You could probably read mine.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, the bigger words. All right, is everybody all set?
Yes, sir.
Matthew 14, we're going to begin in verse 22. Watch how much more of the story gets told. All right? The theologians will have lots of fun with this. You can get really deep into why each apostle wrote differently. But this is my favorite verse, and version of it, and I teach a lot of things out of it. And I'll get to what I mean by that in a moment. All right. So let's begin reading. Matthew 14, 22. Immediately, Jesus made the disciples get into the boat and go on ahead of him to the other side while he dismissed the crowd. This is the crowd that he was feeding. After he had dismissed them, he went up on a mountainside by himself to pray. When evening came, he was there alone, but the boat was already a considerable distance from land, buffeted by the waves because the wind was against it. Verse 25. During the fourth watch of the night, Jesus went out to them, walking on the lake. When the disciples saw him walking on the lake, they were terrified. "It's a ghost," they said, and cried out in fear. But Jesus immediately said to them, "Take courage. It is I. Don't be afraid." "Lord," now watch this. "Lord, if it's you," Peter replied, "tell me to come to you on the water." "Come," Jesus said. Then Peter got down out of the boat, walked on the water, and came toward Jesus. But when he saw the wind, he was afraid and beginning to sink, cried out, "Lord, save me." Immediately Jesus reached out his hand and caught him. "You have little faith," he said. "Why did you doubt?" And when they climbed into the boat, the wind died down. Then those who were in the boat worshipped him, saying, "Truly, you are the Son of God." When they had crossed over, they landed at Gennesaret. And when the men of the place recognized Jesus, they sent word to all the surrounding country. People brought all their sick to him and begged him to let the sick just touch the edge of his cloak. And all who touched him were healed. Different? Includes everything that we read in John. Includes everything. All right? But adds a lot more. All right, there's a little bit more in John at the very end about what had happened, but overwhelmingly, the version in Matthew is much more expansive. It's also much more exciting. So let's talk about what's different, and let's talk about also what we're reading in this, all right, what we're seeing happening. It's interesting, again, at the end of the feeding of the 5,000, Jesus immediately tells his disciples to get on a boat and leave. Is it okay to say that the Lord was up to all kinds of tricks? I mean, he'd already tricked them about the feeding the 5,000. He said, now you feed them. We're talking 8 months' wages, Lord, to feed all these people. What are you talking about? Where are we going to get all this? Little boy comes up with some bread and some fish. Boom. They have so much food. They have all this food left over. That's pretty amazing. Right? So now Jesus is up to another teaching lesson. He sends them out on the boat. By the way, Jesus knows there's a storm coming. You do know these guys were experienced sailors, right? Peter and Andrew and the Zebedee brothers, all four of them are fishermen.
Fishermen. Yeah.
They've been on this lake many, many times. They know about storms. They can tell when storms are coming. I don't know if they could tell a storm was coming here. All right? I think that's part of the reason. Jesus got them in the boat right away because he knew a storm was coming. So he could test them and teach them. Not my idea of a good time. All right? I've been in small boats on rough water. All right? Now, I'm retired Navy. I'm used to very, very big ships. All right? But what happens is we'll pull into a port. The carrier is too big to go into the port itself. So in order to go in on, like, for Liberty or take our day off or something like that, or if I had to go in for work, you have to take a boat in. And the water's not always flat. So you're and I've got to do this a couple of times in Hong Kong Harbor, my favorite harbor in the world. All right? That's where you see all the junks. You see the Chinese junks sailing around? They're beautiful. It's gorgeous. It's my favorite harbor. The Victoria Hills all around the place. The city of Hong Kong is always changing. It's beautiful. It's absolutely great. But there are plenty of times when you can get seasick, just taking the Liberty boats in. So I can relate to this. After he had dismissed him, this is verse 23, after he had dismissed him, he went up to the mountainside by himself to pray. All right. What do you, this has happened before. Jesus has tried to go off by himself to pray. I think everybody here lives alone. Am I correct, with the exception of this couple over here?
Yeah,
This couple over here, right? You guys all live alone, okay? So you
Not
have,
even a pet.
yeah, I know.
I don't have a bird.
Well, Mike's got a cat, and he's got 3 more outside, you know. And I know I hear the dogs and everything. You have plenty of time to pray alone.
Yep.
If you're praying alone, it's just like what Jesus did. And there are times Jesus is, remember in Gethsemane, before his death, remember what he asked his disciples to do?
Pray for me.
And stay awake and pray with me. And they couldn't. They were too tired. They fell asleep. The spirit is willing, but the flesh is weak, is what he says. But it's not uncommon for Jesus to go to a mountainside someplace and pray. So, again, I know sometimes it's not a blessing to be alone, but sometimes solitude is beautiful.
My cat prays with me.
Amen to that.
He hops up on the bed and he puts his paw on.
There you go.
Yeah.
There you go.
He doesn't go
When
like
I'm,
this?
No.
when I'm on my knees.
No, he lays on hands, is what he does. He's a little bit more Pentecostal with that. You know? So Jesus goes up on the mountainside himself to pray. When evening came, he was there alone. But the boat was already a considerable distance from the land. In the book of John, it tells us like 3.5 miles out. 3.5 miles. Just keep this in mind, what we're going to talk about here in a minute. 3.5 miles out, and it was buffeted by the waves because the wind was against it. So in other words, it had gone 3.5 miles, 3 to 3.5 miles, but very slowly. It was hard. The sea was already getting rough. Okay. During the 4th watch of the night. Okay. So now we got to talk about sailor talk.
I don't know where we are.
Oh, I'm sorry. We're in verse 25.
Where?
Oh, Matthew
We're still in
14:25.
What are you?
I'm in Matthew.
Yep, chapter 14,
Yeah.
verse 25.
Oh, well, you went back again.
Yep.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Oh, we're sticking in
Oh,
Matthew.
That's right,
Yeah, we'll
that's
stick in
right.
St. Matthew, okay.
Okay. I know what you're saying. I'm like, I heard that just a minute ago, but, okay, thank you.
What do you think they mean by watches? When they say they've been at watch?
Watches at the different times.
Yes,
Where somebody has to stay awake.
exactly. And everybody else sleeps.
Everybody else sleeps.
And that's a sailor's life. That's a
Yep.
sailor's life. When we say the sailors work 18 hours, okay, wait a minute, let me get that straight here. So 24 minus 18 is what? 6. So they get 6 hours of sleep? Yeah. The term power nap,
They're lucky.
power naps is a Navy thing, all right? Because we're used to staying up so late. What happens, and the worst thing about it, all right, I didn't do a lot of watches at sea. I had to do it with the Marines. Like, for example, when we were in Norway, we were 400 miles north of the Arctic Circle. All right, we're living in a tent. Okay, it's 0 degrees outside. And so we were heated by stoves. The watch had to stay up to make sure the stove kept running. Because if he went to sleep, the stove goes out, and we're all freezing. And I mean freezing. Remember, 0 centigrade is freezing, but 0 Fahrenheit is 32 degrees below freezing. So it was 0 degrees Fahrenheit. So it was dangerous if somebody didn't stay awake and keep the fire going.
When I went in the Air Force, we had barracks, separate rooms, heat, no problem.
Yeah, as Marines, the Marines and I remember I was a sailor with the Marines, we would go to Yokota Air Force Base for vacation. When we get weekend time off, we'd go down to the Air Force Base and be like heaven. You know, so if my brother's watching, he's retired Air Force. Yeah, Matthew, you're the smarter one. Okay. But the watches, the idea is a sailor had to stay awake. Okay. And so during that fourth watch is real late. It's like 3 o'clock in the morning. Keep in mind, Jesus hasn't slept. Okay. He's been praying. All right. During the fourth watch of the night, Jesus went out to them. Okay, so let's pause. Jesus went out to them? They don't have hovercrafts yet. There's no hoverboards. How's he getting there?
Walking on
Jet
the water.
ski.
He's walking jet ski. There you go. I missed that one. He's walking on the water. How's the water? Nice and calm?
No,
It's a tempest. The old King James term is it's a tempest. All right, the wind's blowing against him too. So Jesus is out there walking 3.5 miles on water in a storm. Okay. Verse 26. Okay, now check this out. We all got to pretend that we're the disciples in the boat. Okay? First of all, everybody but at least one person is sleeping, or at least groggy. By the way, it's not easy to sleep on a boat that's doing this. When they do this, dun, 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 oh man, sleeping at sea is wonderful. All right? But now when it's like this. All
I
right?
was on a cruise,
Yeah?
and I was sleeping in a bunk,
Yeah.
and I was going this way,
Yeah.
and then that way,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
my feet would hit, then my head would hit,
Oh my
and I called the bridge,
Right.
wherever, I said, can't you stop doing
You call the bridge?
that?
Hey, Alex.
Oh, I was so mad.
Oh, my God.
Have you ever had any problems sleeping on the cruises? No, it's nice, isn't it? Yeah, nice little. As long as it's a nice roll.
Oh, well, yeah.
Nice
And
little.
that was the only
Been
night,
on
though.
it.
Yeah, that was
Every
yeah.
night.
Yeah, you had foul weather. You had bad weather.
Yeah,
Yeah,
cruise,
yeah. Yeah. So yeah, the cruises they're just joyous.
I called.
Yeah.
I
they're just-
did, I called.
I
right
can't
up-
She calls the captain.
Going on
Well, the
here?
answer is yes, they can. They can. They can turn it into the direction where they're going with the seas instead of against it, but you're not going to make your next port.
He just laughed at me.
You don't want to tell you, we're coming up against the tidal wave. Go back to sleep.
So here the disciples are. We're all in the boat. We're groggy. Remember, we're up all day long, right? Feeding the 5,000. We saw this amazing miracle. We've seen this guy, Jesus, healing sick people all the time, all right? But guess what? Some of us still don't believe. We're going to find that out in a second. It's going to tell us this, all right? So here it is. So all of a sudden, they look out. Now, what would you think if you're out in the middle of this lake in a storm and you see a body walking towards you?
Am I
What's-
seeing things?
Yeah, that would be the first thing I would do. You know, well, let me get these glasses again. Here, one more time. What? All right? Am I seeing things? Okay? And then it keeps walking towards you. And it's now clearly a body. Now what are you thinking? I'd be terrified, all right? I mean, what was it Fred Flintstone would say, I get, feet don't fail me now, whoever said that, okay, and get going. They're terrified. That's exactly what happened. When the disciples saw him walk on the lake, they were terrified.
They're terrified, but they know him. They're his disciples. Why? So they should have known, shouldn't they?
Excellent question, and we need to hold on to that for later in John. Remember after Jesus' resurrection? Okay? He's actually having breakfast with them on the beach,
Yeah,
and they don't recognize him.
right.
There were two guys walking to a town. He's walking with these two guys, two of his disciples. And then all of a sudden, he eats with them and then disappears. And they say, it was obvious the Lord. Couldn't you feel your heart burning? All right? I think in this case, it's simply the fact that he's just too far away for them to really recognize.
Oh,
All right? And it's really kind of loco. I mean, this is really, this is Twilight Zone stuff, right? This is do-do-do-do.
yeah, because I'm thinking, gee, they seen him, what he did, with the fish and the wine, so.
Yeah. Why
But
can't he
like
walk
you said,
on water?
if he's too far away.
Right. And why can't he walk on water?
Yeah, right.
Well, because I don't think that
And all
fit
the
in.
miracles he did.
Yeah, but you know something? It's not fitting in yet. See, we're the blessing. We have 2020 vision. We were talking about that earlier because we're looking back. We can
Right,
see this.
right, this is,
know.
yeah.
You can imagine what it's like trying to teach adults who have never read the Bible, how difficult this is, because he did what? But most of us have been raised since children about these stories, so it's easier for us. But for them too, each miracle was like amazing. Remember, they still rejected the idea that he'd be resurrected from the dead, even after seeing Lazarus. They still can't believe. Remember, doubting Thomas, the whole idea, of knowing him. So again, for them, if we're in the boat, this is just, wow, crazy. All right, so now, when the disciples saw him walk on the lake, we're in verse 26, they were terrified. It's a ghost, they said, and cried out in fear. Oy vey, smear. Right? Oh, woe is me. Okay. 27. But Jesus immediately, just like he sent them out, he immediately said to them, take courage. It is I. Don't be afraid. Okay. Now that you can put that over your doorpost if you want. Especially when you're starting out on each day and you're concerned about the day. Just put that right over your doorpost. Take courage. It is I. Don't be afraid. Courage means putting your fear aside and doing what is right. Jesus says, it is I. And then the most common phrase, the most common admonition, let me make sure clear of that, in the Bible, said we were studying it in Genesis. In Genesis we saw this. We're studying it here in the New Testament. Don't be afraid. But watch who replies.
Peter.
The big mouth, right? The guy who thinks he can do everything. This big, humongous fisherman, all right, who wants to be just like Jesus, except for one thing. Just like me, I don't want to get crucified. Neither did Peter. Lord, if it's you, Peter replied, tell me to come to you on the water. What? That's what he wants? He wants to walk on water just like Jesus. Okay, all right. Jesus says, come. Then Peter got down out of the boat and walked on the water. Now, hold on a second. I told you there are three things sailors don't like other people to do in a small boat in a storm.
Stand up.
We don't like you to stand up. You don't start calling out to people that you want to leave the boat. Okay, hey, I want to leave the boat. And the last thing you do, you don't step out of the boat. Okay? And he does all three. All right, so here's again, this is a experienced sailor, the real thing, okay? He's lived on the water as a fisherman. Our fishermen here coming out of Massachusetts and Rhode Island, all right? We all know the story about the perfect storm, right? You've seen that movie?
Yeah.
Read the book? Okay. Those guys, they're amazingly courageous men to be able to do that, to be able to go out there. And we know the guys coming out to Bedford, they'll be gone for a month. They go out to deep sea stuff.
Yeah.
And it's amazing stuff they do. So these are really courageous men. And sure enough, he steps out. Wow. What faith, isn't? Don't you think that's a lot of faith? That's a man of great faith. By the way, the other 11 are doing what? Sitting down, going, Peter, what are you doing? Peter, what are you doing? What are you doing, Peter? What are you doing? And sure enough, Peter steps out. And it's all good. It's all good, right? And Peter got out of the boat, walked on the water, and came toward Jesus. Can we just end the story there?
Yeah.
Right? Now the other 11 get out of the boat too, right? Because why not? Hey, jump in the water's fine, type of thing, right? No. All right. Here's the story. Here's the reason why. Peter does what? He takes his eyes off Jesus and looks at the wind. He starts to sink because he's taking his eyes off Jesus. He sees the wind, all right? And he became afraid and beginning to sink, cried out, Lord, save me. All right. So that's a sermon in itself, all right? I know preachers can spend a lot of time on this. The bottom line is when you take your eyes off Jesus, you're in trouble. You'll begin to sink. When you take your eyes off your goal, all you see are the obstacles. Okay? You know, the goal, the goal may be, all right, to love on everybody in this building. That'd be a great goal. It'd be very godlike, all right? But then you start thinking about all the obstacles. Yes, exactly right. That's called being a realist. Okay? By the way, so there's an optimist and a pessimist, right? The optimist says the glass is half full. The pessimist says the glass is half empty, right? A realist is an optimist that's been around. Okay? They know what the reality is. That's a realist. But that would be the great goal, is to love on everybody in this building. So look at when Peter realizes that his life is in danger, what does he say?
Save me.
Save me.
Lord, save me. Lord, save me. So he's smart. Smart enough to know who can save him. Lord, save me. There's that word again. Immediately. Immediately, Jesus reached out his hand and caught him. Jesus said to him, you of little faith. What? I'm not stepping out of the boat. I'm with the other 11. Peter's the one with great faith. But Peter's the one now being told you of little faith. As great as Peter's faith was, it was still considered little. As great as his faith was, it was still considered little. Why did you doubt? All right. And when they climbed into the boat, the wind died down. See, the lesson's over. There's no sense for them to get seasick any longer. And those who were in the boat worshiped Jesus. Whoa. It's the first time. Worshipped Jesus. That's treating him as a god. These are Jews. They only have one God. Remember, the first religion on the planet that's monotheistic, one God, are the Jews. 600 years later, will become the Muslims, who only have one God. All right? But at this point, there's only the Jews. Everybody else has multiple gods. So now they're acknowledging that he is God. Look at the saying. Truly, you are the Son of God. Oh, now you figured it out. Now it's all coming together. Now you are the Son of God. Verse 34. When they had crossed over, they landed at Gennesaret. And when the men of that place recognized Jesus, they sent word to all the surrounding country. People brought all their sick to him and begged him to let the sick just touch the edge of his cloak. And all who touched him were healed. When we were studying the book of Acts, when we kept on talking about how it was their faith that healed them, when Peter and Paul were healing them, this is it right here. All they really need to do is just touch Jesus, and they know they could be healed, which is an amazing thing for them. You don't need to turn to the book of John. Just, you can stay where you're at. Let me talk to you about how it finishes it. The next day, the crowd that had stayed on the opposite shore of the lake realized that only one boat had been there and that Jesus had not entered into it with his disciples, but they had gone away alone. So they stopped. They said, wait a minute, let me get this straight. Jesus stayed with us. The disciples went out by themselves. I don't remember Jesus walking with us as we came around to go over there to Capernaum. But he comes in with them on the boat. So they were saying, how do you get in the boat? Okay, so they're thinking about that. Verse 23, then some boats from Tiberias landed near the place where the people had eaten the bread after the Lord had given thanks. Once the crowd realized that neither Jesus nor his disciples were there, they got into the boats and went to Capernaum in search of Jesus. So this is now, so the crowd he had already fed now follows him. There is a more crowd of people coming with their sick for Jesus to care for. And Jesus heals them all. Have courage. It is I. Be not afraid. I don't want to recommend the walking on water thing. Okay? just. I'm sure we're all developing our faith. We really want to trust Jesus. All right? But again, as a sailor, I don't know if you tried it recently. I think unless Jesus is the one standing in front of you on the water, I wouldn't give it a shot.
No.
That's not going to work. Questions and comments. My favorite, when I teach men, when I'm training men about their faith, I've been involved with men's groups, and we'll be in prayer groups, and we'll meet regularly and pray. I can't do them anymore because the men never do anything. They just pray. And I remember I was meeting this a long, long time ago. I said, guys, why don't we do something? I mean, we're praying for God to move, and to do something. So why don't we, do something? And they said, no, Mark, be patient and wait on the Lord. Watch for him to move. I said, move? He's down the street around the corner. He's going in the next state. I think we need to hustle just to catch up. So, see, I love to pray, but I want to do. I want to get out there and make things happen, all right? There are folks out there that are awesome that we need to help. So let's just get going. So I use this term all the time. I said, look, you got to look at it this way. Peter's in the boat, right? He wants to make things happen. He's a doer. He sees Jesus, God. He prays to him. He speaks to God. We call that prayer, right? Right? That's what we do. When we say we're speaking to God, we call it prayer. All right, good. So he prays. And he asks Jesus if he can do something. Jesus says yes. Does Peter sit back down? No. Jesus steps out of the boat. So I'm constantly telling men, step out of the boat. Come on in. The water's fine. Just go. And it's unfortunate how many people they're afraid. They don't want to try anything dangerous. Hey, Mike, let's do something really weird. Let's put a couple of Jesus T-shirts on and a couple of Jesus hats, and let's just go clean the streets. How many men have joined us?
None.
0. How many have said they would?
Actually, I had a few couple anyway.
Have said they would.
Yeah.
How about that pastor when we had the neighborhood association meeting? Remember?
Oh, yeah.
And because the mayor was there, and then this is back when Sam Sutter was running, so we got to see we got to see Mayor Flanagan, and then later on Sam came in to talk to us, right? All right, so there was all these other men there, all right, including this very nice church pastor, and he was talking about how he wanted to start doing services in Griffin Park and all kinds of stuff. And then I talked to him afterwards. I said, this is exciting, but I know these guys. I said, well, tell me, why are you motivated to do this? He said, well, I really think we should be helping to take care of the poor, which is co-hero, all right? And I said, that's great. And I shook his hand. I looked at Mike. I said, Mike, take a good hard look at him. Why did I say that, Mike?
You're not going to see him again.
And we haven't. That was before the elections for Sam, not the current one.
Huh?
No, Tom is a doer. That's Tom Cabral. Tom's out there.
Tom's doing
Oh, no, Tom's a water walker. All
Yeah,
right?
he carries the cross on
He gets
Plymouth
up there.
Avenue.
He's got
and-
other men doing it too.
Yes.
No, he's out there, and he'll come back here to Corky Row again. He'll do the basketball thing again this year. He tried to do the Easter egg hunt at Easter, but it was a storm that day. Because I was out there, I saw him. No. Tom, if you ever watch this, Tom, nah, man, you're the man. You know that, because I kept on going right by and going, yay, baby. All right, no, Tom's on it. Now, this is another gentleman. All right, again, I don't want to put men down. It's just that they're afraid. They're afraid. I mean, Mike's got other stories, unfortunately, too. He can tell you about how these guys really kind of get weak in the knee over easy things that we could do. And again, please pray for us. We're probably going to start the clothing and timeshare here soon. All right, Big Mike here was doing his thing with the garage today between he and my son Alex. I mean, we really organized this place, and we're going to start a food and clothing share. And don't worry, we're going to get you all involved with this, and we'll probably do it right across the street, in the Church of God across the street. All right. We want to be able to get the neighborhood association meetings here, and then we have a whole bunch of things that we want to do on top of all that to help people. But that's stepping out of the boat, and that's the thing. Other questions and comments? All right, I don't have to worry about getting called in the middle of the night saying that I encourage one of you to jump into the pool and walk across it or anything like that. You're not doing anything like that.
I'm gonna fill the bathtub
You
up
fill the
and dry
bathtub,
it.
dry
I was gonna
it.
say, that's,
Yeah.
At least I can't drown, so I don't think I can drown.
Yeah, again, there's another saying you hear a lot of people say, yeah, the next time you're feeling perfect, try walking on water. All right, well, God bless you guys. We'll talk to you next time.